Welcome to On the Corner of Main Street, presented by Plaza Hotel and Casino in downtown Las Vegas. Here is Plaza CEO Jonathan Jossel, Gary Vickery, and I'm your host, Lisa Melmed. Today we are joined by our first ever repeat guest. We have a lot to discuss, so we're going to jump right in. He's the author of VitalVegas.com and at VitalVegas on Twitter, and shares his very opinionated news on Las Vegas, tips, deals, and in his own words, WTFs. Welcome, Scott Roeben, aka Vital Vegas, back to On the Corner of Main Street.
Great to have you here, Scott. You're the second guest we've had on this podcast.
Wow. The very first repeat guest.
2 appearances. My goal is to be on 67 more times.
We're going to at least have you on that.
A little Easter egg for my Twitter followers. It's great to be back. You guys have been doing an amazing job. Can I take 10 seconds to compliment you on how great the podcast is?
We'll give you more than 10 seconds.
I'm telling you, you have leapt to the being one of the best Las Vegas podcasts. And it's a pretty high standard. Some of these folks have been at this for 10 years. You just get the best guests. You have the best conversations. And now you're showing extraordinarily good judgment by having me back. So thank you so much.
Well, you picked yourself. Thank you for helping us get the word out about it as well. And that's the key to this. It's also just getting the people listening to it, because once they listen, then they get to interact with us. And, you know, Gary and I especially, we get guests now saying they want to stay here. We give them complimentary upgrades when they say they listen to the podcast. Anyone that listens to the podcast is a friend and a fan, I guess. But we do take care of people that are engaging with it, and that's why we did this in the first place.
Yeah, and I don't want to be too kissy-uppy, but the fact that you guys are all great as a team, but the fact that you devote time to this shows that you get social media, you get the value of reaching out to people in a different way, and you know, it's hard to tell, but I don't think you shy away from the awkward subjects. I think we're going to have one of those today, but I just appreciate that you're being candid. That's what makes it good and different, because you don't get any kind of PR vibe from it, and people call BS on that stuff so quickly. So I just appreciate what you guys are doing, and technically your show is absolutely amazing. The sound quality and
it's a guy. Apparently it took us 15 minutes to get you situated, so we're not that good.
Scott, do you have an episode that you point to, or a few episodes that you personally enjoy?
The ones that I like of your show. I mean, Oscar Goodman's always going to be kind of just at the top of my list of everything. I love Sheriff Lombardo. Like that was such a weird guest, and he's just so frank and honest, and you asked him all the right questions. Like, to me, that's a big part of. You can have a great guest, but if you don't let them feel comfortable enough to share the awkward stuff, or, you know, you were talking about the Greyhound station. Like, I didn't expect you to talk about that, because, you know, the reason we were talking about it was because it wasn't good for downtown. So to me, that's that being fair and asking somebody the right questions, even if it doesn't necessarily reflect positively on downtown or Plaza or whatever. Those are the moments that I appreciate the most, and that's. I cannot wait. Like, when your show goes live, it's one of the few where I just go automatically to hit play, because I want to hear what's up.
You tweeted that the sheriff is going to be running for governor.
Well, I don't know. You hear a lot of rumors.
And you tweet them
online.
So give our audience and my family in England and those that listen from abroad, give them a little insight. What's happening in Vegas at the moment? Are we back to normal? There's no Ubers. The Virgin Hotel just opened. What's the summarize Vegas for us in a shell? Yeah,
well, those are some great highlights. You know, Vegas is ready to ramp back up, but I don't think anybody thinks that we were fully prepared for the last 2 weekends with March Madness, There was a tax refund. That tax refund season is great for Vegas any year.
The stimmies.
The stimulus as well. I'm talking about just the regular tax refunds. Like this is kind of the sweet spot for when people get their tax refunds. So that combination of things, the weather's been great, like all those things. But I don't think a lot of the casinos have fully ramped back up in terms of staffing, so because they're thinking it's still 50%. Realistically, we're at a solid capacity, but that has placed a burden on staffing and service levels. Rideshare is a perfect example because a lot of these folks are still getting some nice checks to be at home. They're not necessarily out and about, and it's a longer wait for rideshare. So I think we're in kind of a growing pains kind of situation during these transitional months, but the vibe, I think, feels more normal than it has in a year. I think the gaming revenue is up, which is great to see for the casinos. A lot of these businesses, a lot of these restaurants have been suffering for a year. To see folks back and to have there be wait times for restaurants, that's just amazing, because even at the lower capacities, they just weren't getting the business they needed to survive.
You said the rideshares are down because of the stimulus money, but is there a different factor? Somebody mentioned that something to do with emergency directive that they can't charge surge pricing. Is that a thing?
Oh, I actually heard that in a state of emergency, it's like it's a rule to prevent companies from price gouging, basically. But in this situation, it's actually hurt these drivers, because if you can't do surge pricing, you can't get those extra few bucks. Well, this state of emergency has been going on for a year. So it's an extraordinary situation. I don't think those rules were set up to deal with this kind of long-term situation. But, there's still cabs. The cabs are still out there. It's sort of inconvenient. The folks I've heard complain about Lyft and Uber, they're saying, well, it was an extra 20 minutes. I mean, come on. We're a little spoiled if you think 20 minutes or 30 minutes is too long to wait for rideshare. And hopefully it'll be back. I think a lot of those unemployment checks will stop, and those folks will be back driving again. So not to be insensitive to their world, but we need them on the roads because we need the transport.
We need to get people around.
Yes, exactly.
I mean, isn't that the point, that there's vaccines for anyone in Nevada? If you want to get vaccinated, you can get vaccinated for anyone that wants it. And we're open. I mean, as a business here, we're not as busy as we were, but obviously people are here now. It's alive. They're spending money. There's restaurants are doing well again. I mean, what is the end goal here? How do we keep going like this? Until when?
Yeah, it's an interesting, definitely it's a polarizing subject, because when you see a full pool, half the people in Vegas say that is absolutely horrifying. And the other half, there's nowhere in the middle. It's either horrifying or it's amazing. Amazing that business is back, that there's demand, that companies are making money after a really hard year. So it's true in almost every aspect of the conversation. Is 50% is too much. It's not enough. It really is the strangest situation, and we're really right in the middle of the transition back, where people are starting to feel more comfortable. As you said, if you get a vaccine, mask, no mask, you're just much more excited to go out and play and interact and be social with people. And the numbers are low. There's no denying we're under 5% positivity rate for testing. So it's hard to say that we should be in this kind of super afraid, everything kind of, not a lockdown, because we're not in a lockdown, but that attitude of slow and steady. And I guess the prudent folks would say that err on the side of caution. I say err on the side of common sense, and take a reasonable amount of precaution. If you had COVID and recovered, you're good. If you got your vaccination, you're good. And there's not a lot of other people left to my thinking. So come out and have fun at Vegas. Like, that's what I say every day, is within reason.
Vegas wasn't built on slow and steady and, keep your mask on, but it's time to go.
Yeah, and it's hard to say that as a casino. You can't, because the perception is, well, of course you're going to say fill the place back up. I have no affiliation with any casino, and I'm telling you, it's time to relax and enjoy yourself. I'm not anti-vaccination. I'm not anti-mask. I'm pro-common sense, and it's time to get back to a reasonable level of business, because every week and every month that goes by, these companies are losing vast amounts of money. Cutting a pool occupancy from 75% to 25% to 35%, it's hundreds of thousands of dollars in a day. A pool can lose $200,000 in a day having to adhere to the most strict guidelines. So that's a lot of money, and if you think that's nothing, then you live in a different world than I live in. But that represents jobs, that represents prosperity, and that represents a Las Vegas rebound.
What do you think about what the Gaming Control Board is saying about vaccinations, and what are they saying?
So controversial.
And just for the record, I, as the licensee, have no opinion on what you guys are about to talk about.
Yes, I'm not even sure you can acknowledge that it exists.
I've never seen so many curse words in one tweet.
Yeah, no, I was very upset about this. So the Gaming Control Board communicated to all the casinos that they will determine what the capacity of casinos will be moving forward based on how aggressively the casinos have promoted vaccinations among their employees. That's the bottom line. That was communicated in no uncertain terms. It was basically an expression of, we will decide based on whether you have taken extraordinary steps to get your employees vaccinated. So they didn't say it has to be mandatory. They didn't make any of those qualifying statements. They just said, we are going to decide, if we deem you worthy, we're going to decide if you stay at 50% or if you move up to whatever the next percentage is, potentially 100% in May. So a lot of folks
will
are
that be between casino to casino? So there could be a
differentiating-
possibility that on Fremont Street, there's different capacities for different hotels.
Yes. So that's why there were obscenities in my tweet, because you are differentiating businesses. Ultimately, I have from day one, I've said this is not political. Nothing's political. This feels political. If you agree with the governor, if you agree with gaming and the health department, you're good. You could actually come back to 100%. If you don't do what we say, we're going to leave you at 50% and good luck. So two casinos right next to each other, one will be given preferential treatment if they meet the standard that's quite vague of having met the requirements that the governor has deemed and gaming have deemed to be to make them worthwhile to get higher capacity. So I totally get all the folks chiming in saying anything you can do to motivate people to get vaccinated. I agree. Give an incentive, give PTO. Boyd did that. They're like, take a PTO day to go get vaccinated. Like, I'm all for that, but I don't like the coercive tone. It's a threat, and it's, do what we say, or there will be financial repercussions. I'm not a fan of that. It's overstepping of what this agency was intended to do, and I was not happy about it at all.
You were at the Virgin Hotel opening.
Oh, that was great. Another kind of top of mind thing, Jonathan, is anytime anytime a casino opens, it helps lift the boats. The awareness about that new casino helps Vegas, whether you're downtown, whether you're in Boulder, wherever you are, probably in Pahrump, it probably helps. It's people talking about Vegas. It's talking about casinos, gaming. Virgin is interesting. It's been pushed back quite a few times. It's a very strange business model because they've pretty much carved up the whole resort into pieces, and they have individual partners managing each part. So Mohegan Sun, in the casino, everything says Mohegan Sun. Nothing says Virgin, whereas the chips or the Tito vouchers, there's nothing that says Virgin on it. So they manage the casino, someone else will manage the theater, someone else will manage the pool complex,
the restaurants.
Yeah, very interesting business model. It kind of insulates the owners, I think, from some risk, but it also runs the risk of feeling disjointed when you're talking about the Players Club and perks of the Players Club. And I assume they've got all that figured out. I've only been twice, but that's an interesting aspect.
It's a different model, and to be 100% candid, it's not a model I've ever been a fan of, but I do understand why they do it, and I do see how it works. I just think from the customer perspective, it's difficult in terms of when the casino treats you as one business and the hotel treats you as a separate business, and there's hard costs being passed between each other, it changes the dynamic.
Yep. And I've heard from several people who were kind of asked to get involved, and they were just like, we don't understand how this is going to work, so we're going to pass on.
But it's a big deal.
part,
Mohegan Sun has a big database, and it's a new player in town, and could potentially bring a lot more players into town. So
Yep, that's what you're getting with your partnership, is you're getting their reach and their customer loyalty. Mohegan Sun, existing clientele, and now Mohegan Sun has something they can pitch to their customers in other locations. But otherwise, new restaurants, like they have a bunch of new stuff. They got some holdovers. They got Nobu. They've got, the pizza place. I always say check it out. You might find a spot.
yeah, I need to
or
go
a
there.
restaurant.
I got to go check it
Yeah,
out.
you
I haven't
tweeted
been
that
there.
not a single CEO of another Las Vegas casino was at the opening.
Yeah,
I
don't-
was not.
I didn't see any. I heard that Scott Sabella might have been there from Resorts World, but I thought that was very odd. Like tonight, there's a little casino opening in Henderson. It's being rebranded. Used to be El Dorado, unrelated to El Dorado Resorts, but it was called El Dorado, I think. And it's being rebranded, and it's opening, and there will be executives from other casinos there. Some of them in your neighborhood are going there to drop a substantial amount of money, because that's what they do every time a casino opens. You went to Circa, Jonathan. It's part of a rite of passage of invite all the folks from town. Version, I don't know why they didn't do it. If they didn't do it, it was very strange. It could have been COVID related. Maybe some people didn't show up because they knew it was going to be busy.
Right.
But I think it had more to do with it. I don't know. They just forgot or didn't care or didn't want
Well,
folks to show
let's
up.
ask one. Why weren't you there?
I mean, I was actually at Bazaar Meats, the steakhouse. It was my first time over there. Very good steakhouse, by the way. I'd never been there before, and was invited there, so I was there. But I didn't. I don't know. I guess I was just gonna take the time to go check it out.
And you can't really judge a lot on it first night. I
Right.
mean, the craziness of Circa, its first night, or the craziness of Virgin is not indicative of your typical visit. So sometimes because they always bug me, like, where's your report about Virgin? I'm like, you can't review a place or really judge anything on a first night, because it's nuts. Everything's out of whack. So to go back again or go a few days later, I think is actually much more useful, because you get a better experience. And how was Bazaar Meat? I miss Bazaar Meat so much.
What are you, 86 from there now?
I am 86, but here's some breaking news. Sahara paid every penny of my legal fees. The check just
I did
cleared.
hear that from you. Yes.
So they can suck it.
We appreciate you coming back on the show. We have a very important topic to discuss today that caused quite a stir on Twitter. You used to work at Fremont Street Experience, which we learned about in the previous episode with you. And Oliver Lovett, who was on our show previously, a Vegas expert, shared his article about the Plaza's golden age of downtown.
Not by the way, something we commissioned. He wrote of his own choice for Global Gaming Business.
And I highly recommend anyone read it. It has so much fascinating information. But he basically said that he tweeted an excerpt that said the zipline was taken to apparently disadvantage the Plaza, as it was not part of the Fremont Street Experience. And for those that honor the legacy of Las Vegas, the zipline is a shameful reminder of the small-mindedness that can arise on occasion. To which you responded.
Bullshit. I think that's what
He did get verbally abused
paraphrasing,
for that,
but
by the way. He
please.
got a lot of verbal abuse for that on social media that he was not used to.
Yeah,
'Cause-
no, because a lot of his reporting is just factual, but that was a subjective take and in my view, an incorrect take on that situation. It's ironic that I was having that conversation because you were frickin' here and part of it, and a lot of the folks are no longer at Fremont Street Experience, but they're still around. You know, they're here to help set the record straight, and I would love to do that because I think that is a lingering suspicion. I think a lot of that animosity has kind of fallen away over time. But I guess that specific assumption that was some kind of slap to Plaza or punishment or something just is patently absurd. And so if an expert puts it out there.
Well, he wasn't just saying that. He was also saying that the design of it wasn't exactly first class. But that's his opinion. Again, that's not an expert opinion.
Well,
He is
he's very
knowledgeable. He is very knowledgeable.
Yeah,
He is very knowledgeable.
But
So
I don't think
I,
it should be taken kind of just the fact he says it, that it's suddenly fact, you know. And I get that he's
It
yes.
might be.
Well,
Let's
be
take
right.
a look at the history.
I saw the debate that was going on with you and a few other people and another high-profile Twitter account, local Twitter account, and I just saw this conversation. I thought, I've never really shared my story publicly of my involvement, and I'm sure there's going to be maybe different recollections, there might be different takes on it, but I thought that the conversation was an interesting one, and there was enough interest in it for us to at least discuss it, debate it, talk about it. So what I did do is I went back in time and I called Mr. Wynn, Steve Wynn, for his recollection, because he was actually the one of the original pioneers of whatever took place out there. I think there's two parts to it, right? There's people that debate the canopy and what that did, pedestrianizing it, and the canopy in 1995. And then there's the second part, which is the zipline, which came, Gary, you're the
2014.
2014 when the zipline came. So I called Steve and I said, could you tell me your recollection? And he remembered it word for word. 1989 was the year when he opened the Mirage. And the board of Fremont Street called him and said, Steve, we need a volcano, because the foot traffic was hurting, was going to the Strip. And it's funny, when you look at the numbers downtown, it actually corresponds to the decline over the years was coming in the early 90s. And so they challenged him to come up with something that could totally revolutionize downtown. And what he came up with was the rendering that we'll share that rendering, Lisa. But the idea was a canal down the middle with gondolas, and then up in the air having a float. And he pitched this idea to what he called, I can't remember the name of it, it was like the equivalent of the Fremont Street Experience, but it wasn't that yet. And he had Mel Exper from the Plaza, he had Jackie Gorn, he had Jack Binion. He couldn't remember the name of the Four Queens owner at the time, or their representative. And he said, they all sat there and said, gee, Steve, we asked you to do this, but does it have to have water? How are we going to walk across the water? He said, well, we'll put bridges in. He said, what about? And they had a million reasons why they didn't like the water and the canal. But that was his big idea, and he wanted to do the float up in the sky. And then he realized there was nowhere to park the floats because you have to get them down. It just became too complicated to do that. So, but when he came up with the floats and the idea of moving images up in the sky, and again, I don't know if this is true, he's saying he came up with the idea for the light show and the canopy.
Of course he did.
I guess we could try verify that. But he came up with this idea of what the canopy could be and pedestrianizing it. And so then he told me a couple of interesting things. He told me that your stake on the street was based on your frontage. So it wasn't like if you're on the street, you each have a vote. It was based on how much frontage you had on the street is how much of a vote you had on the street. So depending on your size is how much of a vote you had. And he also told me that the West End, which he called the Salsa Gev Las Vegas Club, and what was over there, Golden Gate and one other place, was always the slowest end, was the West End. So that was interesting to me. So what I then recalled from my personal experience was when I was here, the Plaza was not actually a member of the Fremont Street Experience when it was first built in 1995. The Plaza was not a member. Only the Las Vegas Club was. And Jackie Gorn had done that on purpose. He did not want the Plaza to be a member or involved in it because it wasn't directly on the street. Now, others had said, well, we have a place that's not directly on the street, but we still want it to be on, and we get more voting rights. So the Plaza wasn't a member when I got here. However, the group that bought the Plaza at the time, which was Tamara's with another partner, decided in 2006, actually the Plaza should be a member on the street because it'll get us more votes. And because the West End, which is what Steve Wynn had said, was the quietest end, we can do more to program this side and it'll make this side busier. So in 2006 or approximately that time, the Plaza then entered into it. So the first thing that people should know is it wasn't always a member. It joined in 06, and by 08, when the recession started, they stopped paying. Now I wasn't here at the time, but I was here as on the real estate side, not on the operation side. And they stopped paying the dues, which was not a good thing to do. They didn't pay the dues for, I want to say, almost 3 years. Fremont Street and the Plaza had a lawsuit. The Plaza lost. The Plaza paid every single penny that it owed up to that point and then left. That was the deal. If you paid every penny you owed for 3 years, even though you weren't a member at that time, you could leave. So many people say, well, is that the right thing to do? And obviously it's not the right thing to do to not pay your contractual obligation, but there was a debate about why it was a member in the first place. Did it get the benefit of revitalizing the West End of Fremont Street that it was supposed to get? And then along came all the outdoor bars. They weren't the outdoor bars, but the outdoor bars is where everyone started making a lot more money. And then came the zipline, which made money, and it made these fees very little relative to how much money the bars were making and the zipline was making. So all that being said, the Plaza was no longer a member.
And when the lawsuit ended in 2010. Right,
and then I think it was a little later than that, but I don't remember exactly.
2011, 2012, and then the zip line's built in 2014.
Yeah, but there was a zip line out there already. There was a very temporary-looking zip line. Okay. They were the ones who had the idea of the zip line in the first place. Obviously, Fremont Street saw how much money they were making.
Where did that one end? In the middle, or
in the middle?
Plaza?
Yep. And they had the plans to go the full length, but then obviously I think Fremont Street realized there's a good business here.
Yeah, they do the bootleg canyon zip line, same company, and it started where the tower is now, the big kind of Slotzilla tower. So it was basically in the same spot, and it was rickety. Mm-hmm. I did each one once, and that was plenty because I have a heights thing. But yeah, Fremont Street Experience, they crunched those numbers, and they were like, well, hold on. And so I think at the time they approached that company to be a partner or invest, and they were not willing to invest anymore. So it actually worked out great for Fremont Street Experience and all the member casinos, because it changed everything for them financially. That contribution that they were making each month, substantial amount of money, $35,000 or $37,000 a month or something for the.
Well, that depended on your that depended on your shares.
Right. Yeah. So like a Golden Gate was a portion of that.
A small share versus Golden Nugget as a full share versus Four Queens.
But that's interesting that Steve Wynn said that this was based on almost like your square footage facing the street. That was your vote.
It was still the same. It was still the same for us, even when we got here in 2005. It was still based. It was still you still had a fractional vote based on your whether it was your size or your dues that you were paying.
That is interesting, because those votes have a real world fallout or impact. So anybody who has more votes, they have more sway. They have more pull. And Terry Caudle owns Binions and Four Queens, just has a lot of pull. He has more votes, so it's disproportionate, and that's always a conversation they're having about who gets to come in, who doesn't. There's been conversations about downtown Grand.
So we did talk about rejoining at one point, and I don't think they need members at this point because of the. How much money everything's making. They don't need the members. And I think we have a good relationship with everyone now. But I do believe, and I think we can debate this till we're old, that at the time the intent and design of the zipline wasn't necessarily to harm the Plaza, but it was done with disregard for the Plaza. And I think some people would use a harsher word than that. But I think, and I don't necessarily begrudge that, right? It was a bad business dealing. It is what it is. And in hindsight, ever since it went up, the Plaza's done better year over year, except for the pandemic year.
Well, there is no. We can argue what the design was based on. I believe it was based on engineering. I don't get the vibe that it was a super high priority to not obstruct the view, given the relationship. So I'll go with that.
Okay.
But those, I don't think most people know that the base of that landing platform goes down like 40 or 50 feet. It had to, because of this massive, not just the weight of the wires, but the tension. So there were certain engineering requirements. People online were showing pictures of these kind of crappy, landing platforms in the Amazon, where it's basically just two poles and a thin little platform. Like, why couldn't you do that? Well, it's called gravity in engineering and science. That's why you couldn't do it. Mm-hmm. But you can't. I think you would also agree that this thing has delivered customers basically to your doorstep.
See, I think that's the biggest thing, is that it's not only just harming the view of Oscars, which is what it is, but people come to the end of the street and then they stop at a concert. They're not crossing the street into the Plaza, which who knows if that was also done intentionally or not, or without regard.
So you would actually say that entertainment and Slotzilla have not contributed to the success of Plaza to foot traffic to even Steve Wynn said this was the slow end of the street. Well,
yeah.
it is not as slow now.
But
When you have a
wasn't this
band on
area
that
the glitter
stage-
gulch, like with all the sparkling neon where the westerns were filmed? Like I thought this was the happening side. Maybe not later on then.
I mean, there was a lot of foot traffic to Glitter Gulch strip club.
But that was before the Las Vegas Club. I guess, Scott, the question is, so I think from our perspective today, we think we're in a great position. The zip line is what it is, but with Circa now here, we've had, call it 8 years of a shuttered Las Vegas Club, then a Las Vegas Club being demolished, being eaten piece by piece. Then you got construction and disruption on Main Street. Then you got the construction of Circa. Today you have no encumbrances. You got Main Street as beautiful as it's ever looked. You got a new building across the street. And I think we feel like we're good where we are. But there was a time, I'll never forget, I was standing in the Dome and someone said, "Man, you must have really pissed someone off," when they saw the thing going up. And I don't begrudge it. But I do think that it's hard to say that the zip line was a catalyst for. I think it was great for the street, and I think the idea that Fremont Street was this. It started as just a light show, and it became 4 stages. It became a zip line. It became outdoor bars. I think that whole thing evolved, but the numbers before the Fremont Street Experience was built, the best year Fremont Street ever had in gaming was 1992, and that was before the Fremont Street Experience. Then there was a year of when it got built. It did have some very good years close to that. And then the second best year it ever had was 2019. So I think there's an interesting question about whether it's everything else that was happening downtown. So in 1992, you didn't have all the strip casinos and all the competition. But as downtown's now making a comeback, is it Fremont Street which plays a big role of that, or is it just the general reinvestment taking place in all these hotels and casinos? And would that have happened without Fremont Street being there? I think there's too many variables.
A lot of variables. And you're talking about one metric.
No, casino
the
win is
metric
kind of
is gaming, right?
Yeah.
So, but some of the other metrics are that of the millions of people who have ridden on Slotzilla, we did a survey, 70-ish% said they would not have come downtown were it not for Slotzilla. So that is a substantial number of people coming for a ride. You could debate the value of those folks because they tend to be younger, maybe not as much disposable income. That's not like the sweet spot for a casino customer, but that's a lot of folks coming down to drink, which is not in gaming revenue. There's people coming down to go to these restaurants, which is not gaming revenue directly. And so the other metric is just how many people come downtown to see the light show. Another substantial number, 60 to 70%, say that they come from the Strip to downtown for the light show. So those two things combined, because the biggest argument on the other side is you're blocking the view. Unless there is what you mentioned, that people are stopping because they can't see past the stage, which
I can tell you
makes sense to me too.
I can tell you from personal experience. I traveled to Las Vegas about 2 to 3 times a year and would always come downtown at least for a night. I stopped at that zip line. I did not know the Plaza was here until I moved to town. So that's at least 10 to 12 times that I would stop at the Las Vegas Club and then head back up to the rest of Fremont Street.
That's a bigger problem than just it blocks the view from Oscars. It blocks the view of Plaza from Fremont Street. That I've never heard that come up. I've only heard people looking out there at the back of the landing platform going, that ruined everything. It ruined the view. The canopy ruined the view first, of course. And then the landing platform ruined everything else because you can't get an unobstructed view. But that actually makes sense because once you get people down with the live entertainment, obviously the folks that are in Fremont Street Experience, they think entertainment is huge because it brings people downtown.
Right.
But if you get them to the end of the street and they're not coming across the street, I think you need more 2-for-1 deals at Oscars.
Crossing. That's a promotion.
I'm no marketing
I've been
genius,
here
but-
15 years, and every single marketing person's coming and said, "Well, how do we get more people to cross the street?" I take a different approach. We got to focus on ourselves. We have the second biggest hotel downtown with 1,000 rooms. We have the biggest hotel in terms of land size, and I think that the opportunity is on us to develop something that people want to be at, fill our 1,000 rooms. We've seen that as we've started to do better, it's because we're filling our hotel with better clientele. And those people will come across here. I think the issue was always, well, come across there and then what do I want to do? So I think we have something that we're improving the experience here, and now more people will come across. There is benefits to not being on the street, although I think they're outweighed by the benefits to being able to sell drinks directly there and having the foot traffic. But there are benefits of being off the street and having the different, a quieter experience, being able to tell people that you're sort of secluded, but you can walk there just as easily. But if you want to come away quieter and have a different experience, you can still offer that as well.
Yeah. There's headaches galore that you don't have. You know, you don't have any pickle drummers sitting out in front of within earshot of your dealers and your customers all day long. Like everybody loves the circus down there, but you're close enough to the circus for people who like that. But the way you're set back a little, you avoid a lot of that stuff that annoys the crap out of me. So that's why I'm in your building quite often, is I have to get away from that. I can't do that every day. That's mood contingent, circus, people watching, all that stuff. But over here, I think doing things like this podcast help people understand what's here so they have a reason to cross the street. It's whether they see it or not. If they know about it, they want to check it out, they want to come back. And once they're here, if you treat them right, they're going to come back. It doesn't matter if there's a minefield out in front of your property. They're going to come because it's something that's in it for them.
I know there's a lot of social media questions. I'm not sure if you have a bunch of them, but there was some questions specifically about, do I think that the zip line or the canopy will ever go away? And I do not. I don't see a reason in at least in the next century for either of them to go away. I don't think that they're the only reasons for downtown's success. I think that would be to diminish Oscar Goodman, all the private developers that have come into downtown, Tony Hsieh, all the things that have happened around us, the city's involvement with Symphony Park. I think there's so many factors that we've discussed in this podcast, but I think it's successful enough in and of itself, and it's a different element of downtown that works, and I don't think either of them will ever go away.
Yeah, though, I think the canopy, you're set. We just got an upgrade, so I think that's good. The only thing that I could ever foresee happening with the zip line, because in either case, you got to think of something better. You got to think of a way to make more money than that zip line. I don't know that it exists. The Stratosphere amusement rides do really well, but there's some physical limitations here. But if there were ever a safety issue where demand for the zip line stopped, that would be the only thing I could foresee as happening. There's been a really good stretch of time where there's virtually no safety stuff. But if there was something bad that happened that were dramatic and demand just stopped, I think it would probably go away. But it has changed the revenue model, because Fremont Street Experience was always a loss leader. It was always the money would flow out, and that was its purpose. It was a money-losing endeavor. Well, that stopped the day the zip line opened. I think
Well, remember they wanted to sell the naming rights to it.
They did?
They wanted to monetize it.
For the whole thing.
Yeah, this was way back.
Yeah.
This was way back. And the zipline came along and took care of all of that.
Well, the great part is all these companies come down ready to do these deals or have corporate events, then they walk over and they see the guy with the sign that says, "Kick me in the nuts for $20," and they go right back to Google or Verizon or whatever. Like, it has killed so many deals that it's a public street.
Yeah.
You can't. We had one or two events that were like buying out the whole street. These are $1 million deals. So many have been lost because those folks want to come down and see the environment. Even if you pull a special permit, those folks are still around. There's still
I think that is a great point.
Do you think that'll ever go away?
I don't think you know much more about this than I do, Jonathan, but I don't think this street could ever be privatized. The discussions that I've heard about it, there's hundreds of owners of each of these little portions. Every block is dozens, if not hundreds, of owners that everyone would have to agree. No 100 people have ever agreed about anything in the history of Las Vegas, and certainly not downtown. So I think there's financial challenges, legal challenges, but in my dream world, I want to have Fremont Street Experience be like the park. I want it to be like Link Promenade. When you walk through there, you might see entertainment, but it has been hired and screened. There's no pedophiles dressed up like Mickey Mouse. There's a different quality of performer, and it changes the experience. It could still be fun, people watching circus, but you know what you're dealing with, and it is curated. It's a curated
I think
experience.
that's exactly right, and that would change the atmosphere and a lot of the element that's out there that people don't feel safe around or necessarily want to see. That's just a fact.
Yep. Other than getting rid of the bus station, that is a qualitative change to one's experience out here.
Jonathan, if you could go back to 2008
Yeah.
and say things were a little bit different, no recession, do you think you guys the Plaza would have stayed in the Fremont Street Experience?
Yeah, I can't speak for the group that was managing the place at the time.
If it
What
was
went
you,
on in
if
their
it was
mind.
you, and hindsight's always 2020.
Well, the challenge was they were a part of managing because they had the Las Vegas Club. The Las Vegas Club was a member, but they didn't feel like they had enough votes and rights to push for more of the spend to be on the west end of the street. So that's why they said, let's add the Plaza in and give ourselves more of a vote. Would I have liked to have just kept the Las Vegas Club in there? Sure. But I think in hindsight now, yeah, I would have liked the Plaza to have been a part of it and being a part, because I do believe in you got to invest in your community. I think Larry Ruvo talked about that on the podcast and being a part of the community and investing in the community, and I would have liked to have had more of a say in that. But I feel good in the sense that now I've made amends with a lot of the different business. It's also difficult because in 2005, a lot of the people that were a part of that decision to put the Plaza in weren't there in 2008 when this all took place, and then weren't here subsequently, or even prior when this whole thing got conceived. So it's changed people. I feel pretty good about the relationships we have now, and I feel good about where the Plaza is, and I feel good about what's happened across the street. So all in all, I'm pretty happy with how it's played out.
Like, I don't even know if we've covered all the ground we need to cover because it's so complicated.
Well, you work there. Didn't you hear the inner workings of
Yes.
let's build this despite the Plaza?
That's what I wasn't there at the time, but I know all the people that were there at the time. Like, they're not hiding anything. They
Yeah.
don't have any hidden agenda, but I totally get the idea that you can make an engineering decision, and maybe if the relationship was better, could it have been built differently? I guess.
Yes.
But the folks that are talking about it, you're saying yes. But what would that have been?
Well,
you
firstly,
can't
you
build
could have done.
this thing
Okay,
out of
you could have done.
plexiglass.
No, the back section could have had glass through it, so you could have seen through. But the caveat to what you're talking about is it wouldn't have taken a decade, well, not a decade, half a decade, to get the screen on the back. Right, that was just never a priority.
It would have been a priority if the relationship had been
Correct.
better.
Yeah.
That sounds right.
Yeah,
Actually,
so
but it's beautiful now.
yeah, that took a lot of work, and shout out to Patrick Hughes who helped make that happen.
But are you allowed to talk about how even that happened? Like, that wasn't just some magnanimous gesture.
I met with them 6 years prior, saying let's do something, whether it's a mural, whether it's a screen, whatever it is.
There was some talk about a projection.
We wanted to do a
see
projector to go
through.
straight through. We did a mock-up of that. We did a projector on it, like what it would look like live on the other side of the street. It was the work of Patrick. I think probably the board. I don't know that for sure. And then the mayor, because the city council was giving them money for the remodel.
Now we're getting somewhere.
And
This is not
this was
commonly
all part of
known,
it.
but I keep telling people that's how Vegas works. This thing was not a magnanimous gesture on the part of Fremont Street Experience. It was part and parcel of, we want to renovate our screen. Where's that money coming from?
Yep.
We need a contribution from the city of Las Vegas. Who has influence with the city of Las Vegas? Maybe the mayor? Who is she married to? Oh, geez. The whole thing just comes to
I think
pass.
any mayor would have done that. It's important for downtown Las
I
Vegas.
guess. But the fact that the restaurant has Oscar's name on it is not lost on anyone who knows what happened. That's how Vegas works, and I feel horrible that it took so long to do it. It feels like beyond the view from Oscar's, it's just a better look for the street than having this big square ugly thing. I'm still in the camp that the building of this thing was engineering based, but it could have been augmented or enhanced to make it less painful for the Plaza and its visitors.
I do
and
think that
guests.
any discussion like you two were talking about people crossing was a conversation prior to the zip line. People not crossing the street was always an issue many years back, which is probably again back to what even Steve Wynn said about the West End being slower and the Plaza not wanting to be a part of it, because back in the 90s the Plaza wasn't a part of it. So I think there's a lot of history. We probably created more confusion than answers today.
But
But at least we have shared it.
Clear. there is no benefit to millions of people being delivered. The zipline is a customer delivery system. They are within earshot. They can see.
There is benefit.
When
There
they
is
land,
benefit,
they
Scott.
look up. What do they see? They don't really see Golden Gate. They don't see Circa. They see Plaza. So, and this has been years now of bringing people to a side of the street where people are lazy. When they get off this thing, they're grabbing the first drink they can get. They're playing at the first craps table they can find.
Well, we might have something new for them when they get up to look at coming up soon.
What?
Ooh.
No, there's definitely benefit to it, and there's betterment to the whole of downtown in having things like that. So yes, them landing here, extending that definitely helps. But I don't think you can pinpoint one thing. I think it's the betterment of everything that's happened down here, and to disregard everything else just to say that it was just that is, I guess,
Not just that.
Right.
No, it is momentum. I give all the credit in the world to the guy who did the social media for Fremont Street Experience. The reach and engagement that audience went from 70,000 people when I started to 700,000 people on that Facebook page. And if you don't think that played a part in raising awareness about downtown, all of it, I would talk about everything.
We have you to
including
thank.
Plaza. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for
Finally.
joining us again on the corner of Main Street. You're our second guest, and we appreciate you being here. And don't forget to stay up to date with Scott on Twitter at Vital Vegas.
Thank you. I can't wait for my third appearance. Thank you. Finally.
We'll be back again soon, but in the meantime, please rate, review, and subscribe. Tell your friends about On the Corner of Main Street. And of course, follow us on social. On Twitter and Instagram, it's at Plaza Pod, and on Facebook, find us at Plaza Podcast. Or go right to the top and tweet Jonathan at Jonathan Jossel. We'll see you next time from right here on the corner of Main Street.